It is what it is. I've had a cold, and it doesn't make it any better when you love someone that you're talking about. When describing Anne and the love they had for her and felt from her family, I got some great words out of the family. The first word they used to describe Anne was sweet, and that's a perfect word. I think that's the word I would have chosen. Carol said when they posted on Facebook that she had passed, that was the word that kept coming across over and over and over, was how sweet Anne was. Carrie was quick to add that she was a nurturer and encouraging. He said she was always willing to encourage me to shoot for my dreams. Adding, a lot of moms will say, well, you've got to look at the practical side of things, but she was never like that. She was encouraging, and she wanted me to help me reach my goals. How wonderful, really, to think about, for a son to know that his mother was always his biggest cheerleader. At the same time, Anne let the kids know where they had to toe the line, and if they got out of line, she'd use all three of their names, their first, middle, and last, and that was their way of knowing that they were in big trouble. Anne clearly came from a day and age when discipline was important to her family, and she wanted to make sure that her kids grew up right. But Anne was also described as beautiful. Bob said she was much prettier on the inside than outside. And if that's the case, she must have been absolutely gorgeous in her heart. I've seen pictures of Anne when she was younger, like the ones that they're showing on the screen, and she was truly a stunner. I never actually saw the picture with the peroxide through the middle of the hair, but I imagine it was pretty beautiful. Kevin was funny. He said, wait till you see the picture of my mom in the beauty contest, which shows up once in a while. He said, I know it sounds weird, but my mom was hot. It does sound weird, Kevin, by the way. That beauty really never left Anne. I was stunned when I went to see her in the emergency room. I guess it was on the 20th. And there she was. She had an oxygen mask on, and she was really gasping for breath. It was such a hard time for her. And her family, some of them were there. And her pants legs were rolled up to her knees, and she had IVs in her arms. And I looked at her, and I remember saying that day, how in the world can she be that beautiful, but be in that physical condition at this time? It was just truly amazing that her beauty would just radiate through all of what she was going through. Some people have it, don't they, Bob? And she had it. But another appropriate word to describe her was funny. She loved to laugh, and she put up with Bob's jokes for years. If you've been around Bob, you've heard him talk about her cooking and so forth, and she'd just giggle. She was quietly one of the funniest people I ever met. Bob knew that teasing with her was a good way to keep their marriage healthy and happy. He said he used to call her Imelda Marcos because she had so many shoes. And he said at one point he went through her closet and had her count. She had 102 pair of shoes. And he just thought that was too many, so he encouraged her to get rid of some of her shoes. And so she went through the chore of looking through all the shoes, and she finally decided she could get rid of 2 pair of shoes. He was so proud of her for getting rid of any. But then she decided she couldn't get rid of one of them, so she kept 101 of the 102 pairs of shoes. Bob just knew that keeping her laughing was a big part of having a healthy marriage for 63 years. And they understood that marriage takes work. So they put effort into making each other happy and taking care of one another. And on Anne's 81st birthday, just a few weeks ago, Bob wrote her a birthday card, and he gave her the assurance that after 63 years of marriage, nothing was going to change. And he wrote, honey, you've looked after me these many years. Now it's my turn. I will look after you until the Lord calls us home. They also understood that marriage ought to be fun, and their marriage was fun. They had a condo down in Florida for many years, and they'd go to in the wintertime, let me come down and visit with them one time. That was the first time I met their dog, Sax, who might be the smartest dog I've ever met. And they loved having their family around and laughing together. Having the grandchildren was one of Anne's biggest blessings, and when Cooper was little and he struggled to call her Nana, she got the new name Nano. Anne loved being called Nano, and her grandchildren called her Nano with affection. And it just seemed to fit the way I think about it when I hear that name. Cooper said she was always concerned about the presents at Christmas and making sure that every grandchild got the perfect gift every year. He said she was almost meticulous about it. Then Cooper added, getting her back home from the hospital in time for Christmas was the perfect gift for everybody this year. And that points to another adjective to describe Anne. She was brave. I watched her fight her illness and difficulty breathing, and she was as strong as anyone I've ever seen. I've seen a lot of people pass from this world, and I dare say I can't think of too many that I've ever seen pass with such grace and dignity and strength of character as Anne. It was really amazing to watch. She was only 90 pounds maybe, but she was a fighter and she was tough. Watching her strength and watching her dignity remind me what I have learned about a lot of things in life, and that is in many ways women are stronger than men, many ways. Men are generally physically stronger, but I've seen more women go through more things with more strength than many men could ever handle. Proverbs 31 has words that seem to fit Anne. She is clothed with strength and dignity. She can laugh at the days to come. She speaks with wisdom, and faithful instruction is on her tongue. As Carrie told you, Anne was very competitive. She didn't like to lose. Bob once said when they were playing a family softball game and her team was going to lose because they weren't playing well, she got furious. And Carol said that you didn't see Mom angry very often, but Carrie said, I remember a time when she got angry with our family, with me. He said he had turned 18, and he and his best friend Jimmy were going to go vote, and Anne called them aside and told them to vote for George Busby. Now, back then, the ballots were paper ballots, and you punched a number for the candidate, and George Busby was number 12, and that's who Jimmy and Carrie voted for, but the man running against them, him, was number 13. So when they got back home, Anne asked, did you vote for George Busby? And Carrie said, yep, voted for George Busby, number 13. She said, good. 13? He said, yeah, we voted for Busby, 13. He said, Jimmy, who'd you vote for? Was he 13 on your ticket? Yeah, George Busby, 13, he said. She got mad. She said, no, darn it, he was 12. Carrie said, well, he was 13 on my ballot. Was he 13 on yours? Yeah, he was 13 on my ballot. She said, you two idiots. She said, if he loses by 2 votes, it's going to be your fault, darn it. You might not have seen Anne mad too often, but when she did, she'd get pretty riled up, I guess. Anne's spiritual life was rooted in faith from the time she was little. She grew up in Sardis United Methodist Church. After that, she and Bob attended Roswell Street Baptist, then Heritage Christian Church. In 2009, Bob and Ann became charter members of Legacy for 3.5 years. And for the last 3.5 years, she sat on hard metal chairs and worshiped in a gymnasium until it was time to open the doors on this facility. She loved getting to move in here, and she loved getting to be with her friends from the Golden Crew. Unless Ann was feeling bad, she was always here meeting with them once they were able to move into this building. She loved the fellowship opportunities here at church, and there is a picture, if we can show it, that is one of my favorite pictures from a cookout we had in August of this year. I don't remember who sent me that picture exactly, but it is a favorite of mine that I keep on my computer, to have the 4 generations of beautiful women that somehow or another Bob had in his life. One more thing, it is true that as Kevin told you, they love to sing. Anne had a beautiful voice, and Carol said that they were always singing on trips. One of my favorite stories is hearing Radine Dowman, who works here at the church, talk about going to Thanksgiving at their house this year and them singing at Thanksgiving, and her boys getting to remember what it was like to sing with your family. I don't think many people do that anymore, but they should. It encourages faith, and it helps build a relationship with those that you love. You know, as I reflect on the reality that Anne is now in heaven with Jesus, I realize that her spirit never gave out. It's just that her body wore out. When I think of that truth, I think of the words of the Apostle Paul. Paul talked about this in 2 Corinthians. He wrote, now we know that if the earthly tent that we live in is destroyed, we have a building from God, an eternal house in heaven, not built by human hands. Meanwhile, we groan, longing to be clothed with our heavenly dwelling, because when we are clothed, we will not be found naked. For while we are in this tent, we groan and are burdened, because we do not wish to be unclothed, but to be clothed with our heavenly dwelling, so that what is mortal may be swallowed up by life. Anne's earthly tent began to fail. She could hardly breathe near the end, and she was wearing out physically. Once again, allow me to tell a story that I've told many times before. Even if you've heard it before, just listen again. I think it helps illustrate this truth. Years ago, when John Quincy Adams was 80, he was hobbling down a Boston street, leaning heavily on a cane. He recognized that his earthly tent was beginning to fail, and it was tattered and torn. A friend asked him how he was doing, and he smiled and he said, "Fine, sir, fine. But this old tenement that John Quincy lives in is not so good. The underpinning is about to fall away, the thatch is all gone off the roof, and the windows are so dim John Quincy can hardly see out anymore. As a matter of fact, it wouldn't surprise me that before the winter's over, if he had to move out. But as for John Quincy, doing fine, sir, doing fine." It just so happens that before this winter was over, Ann had to move out. But I can assure you that Ann is doing fine, just fine, because she knew the promise of Jesus Christ, her Lord and Savior. You know, a Christian's hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. And it's in times like this that we cling to that shared hope we have in Jesus Christ. Because of Jesus Christ, Ann had hope that she would one day be with him in heaven. You know, because our lives are short here on earth and long in eternity, we all need to live with that hope of the Lord in our hearts. Death can be troubling. The death of a loved one, or even the fear of we have in our hearts about dying, can cause us to worry and wonder about what lies ahead once this life is over. The reality is life will go on once life on earth has passed, and with most everything else in life, we have a choice about what will happen when we die. Jesus said of himself, "I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." And that means if we believe in Jesus, and Jesus alone, we'll be blessed now in this life and in eternity. Anne was certainly blessed in this life. She was blessed with a husband who loved her completely and worked on their marriage for 63 years. She was blessed with 3 loving children raised to know and love Jesus as their Lord and Savior. She was blessed when each of those children married great men and women of faith. She was blessed with 6 grandchildren who all know the love of Jesus Christ. And she was blessed with 2 great-grandchildren who will be raised to know and love Jesus as Lord and Savior as well. Ann did tell Bob that she wouldn't change one thing about her life. She had no regrets. She lived a wonderful life here on earth. How great to have that feeling in your heart when you reach the end of things on earth. A life well lived will take you to a place that Ann's life took her with no regrets. Ann will be missed. I'll miss her here on Sunday mornings because she and Bob would come about 30 minutes early to church so he could talk to everybody. And she would just come sit down. And I'd go to her and I'd say, "Where's Bob?" She said, "Oh, he's out there flapping his gums." I said, "Are you still with that old coot?" And she'd say, "Yes." She said, "I wouldn't want it any other way either." You know, the day Ann passed, I was blessed to get to go by and see her at her house for just about 3 minutes. She was in her room, and her dog Sax was right there, leaned up against her legs. She opened her eyes and she smiled. I talked to her a little bit. I told her I loved her, and she said she loved me too. And as I was leaving, I ran into Carol in the front room. And I said, "Well, your mom just always has this way of making me feel so special when I see her. I feel like a movie star when I see her." She said, "Well, that could be because I just gave her some morphine about 20 minutes ago." But I'm always going to remember that smile and think it was for me. And to the family, I would just say, to be sure to take your memories of Ann and tuck them away in your heart and pass on the things that you've learned, all from her, like grace and strength and love and family and singing and playing games and rubbing it in